Hello, everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of the Veilcast. This is a vodcast for the upcoming MMORPG Camelot Unchained. I'm your host, Ziz, and joining me today are my guildmates from Ordo Veritas and Legend Gaming, Alistair and Velik. How you guys doing today?
Who are you asking first?
Both of you, how you guys doing?
Only one of us. I'm doing good.
Doing good?
Yeah, I'm great too.
Doing great. Awesome. Well, real quick, before we jump in, I just want to thank everybody in the chat, everybody who's watching. We're super excited for this vodcast. Hi, Mom. No, just kidding. We're super excited, obviously, for this vodcast and for the game. And today we're going to be talking about the foundational principles for Camelot Unchained, right? The game's not out yet, right? So we can't show you screenshots and stuff. But the foundational principles, right? This is what the game's going to be, right, guys? Like, this is what, right? You put it on paper.
Yeah,
we're excited for it.
You got to start somewhere, right? And in this case, since the game started on Kickstarter, you know, they're more important because they are pretty much what people are supporting the game for. So it's not just, you know, empty developer words. Oh, we're going to do this, and then they forget it. You know, this is solid.
Right,
It's a promise to everyone.
Yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
everybody who did the Kickstarter, everybody who backed it, this is what they were backing. So I mean, they're kind of stuck doing that, right? Like, because a lot of games say we're going to do this, we're going to do that, but when it comes down to it, you know, they're just at the, you know, whatever the developer wants. But
yeah,
we're the
I
developer.
think that with this model, there's a different involvement from the population, from the players. You know, we are not just watching as the developers develop the game. We are actually, you know, being part of it, because if they don't consider what we say, you know, there could be serious problems for them. You know, the community is in fact influencing much more, and they have to listen to us much more because we are kind of paying for the development. You know, it's not just sitting here waiting until they launch the game as it usually is with a company. So.
Yeah, and I really think that's part of the reason. I mean, besides the developers and everything, of course, that play a huge factor. But I think that's really part of the reason why the Kickstarter did so well, is because they had this list of promises that people could look at and they go, you know, I agree with these, or the people that looked at them went, I don't agree with these, so I'm not going to back it. But everyone that did back it looked at them and said, this is what I want, so I will give you money for it.
And there's 15 different foundational principles that we're going to go over here. We're not going to go over every single one because they're like 2 or 3 pages each, but there's some that really stuck out to us that really kind of give us an idea of the direction that this game's going, right? So let's jump right in. And the very first foundational principle here says that be willing to take risks, even if it doesn't, even if fortune doesn't always favor the bold, right? So tell me, I mean, Alistair, what does that mean to you to take risks, right? Doesn't every game say that?
Yeah, they kind of do. They kind of do, but they don't in the end. You know, like they say they're going to take risks, but they don't develop on it. I mean, saying you're going to take risks is very easy, but then actually going in there and doing something about it. And I think this so far, only with the BSC videos, which we'll certainly talk about in later episodes, they have already shown that they are really taking some risks. You know, there are systems that, you know, even for the seasoned MMO players, we look at it and we're like, I don't know if that's going to work, you know, and that's the kind of risk we're talking about, you know, the kind of stuff that we really have to try. It's new concepts and very, very different from what we're used to, but they could work or they could not, you know, and that's the whole point. I think it's very important, and I honestly think that the MMO industry kind of needs that right now. You know, we're running on a phase where people are just trying to give us the same, you know, it's the same thing, and they come up with concepts, and but it's all marketing, and then in the end, the game is not developed as promised. It's not even developed properly for the most part, which is kind of sad. And we have been stuck at this for at least the last 6-7 years. Mm-hmm. So I think it's kind of refreshing to see these Kickstarter games like Camelot Unchained, and also I think we have Star Citizen, which has a similar motto, right? So
yeah, there's a bunch of them.
Yeah, Star Citizen is the biggest one right now, and then you have Camelot Unchained and others. Honestly, this could easily be the future for the MMO genre. You know, it could be how we do it now, but we'll have to see. But in order to do something that means something, you got to take risks. So I like this principle a lot.
What about games though that try something different? People play them, and then it's not the game they're used to, right? Like they're used to the way other games work, and they stop because it's too different. I mean, reading in this foundational principle here, I mean, we're looking at this thing talking about how there's no PvE, right? There's no leveling or gear grind, right? There's limited fast travel. I mean, you look at games nowadays, and people say, you know, let me click where I want to go. Why are you making me run across the map, right? And so people say, right, that they don't want to do all this stuff, right? Is this really what people want, to be different? I mean, Velik, have you played other games that are a lot different and enjoyed it, or do you keep going back to games that are familiar?
That's kind of it is kind of a loaded and interesting question, because I think it's a mix of both. You know, sometimes I enjoy something refreshing and different, but sometimes over the years I have periodically always seem to end up, every couple of years I end up back at WoW for a couple of months, because it's some reason they come out with some new content or something, and I'm like, oh, I remember I had some fun with that from time to time, and I get sucked back into it. So there is kind of a pull towards playing some of that stuff that is familiar, that you have done before. But I think this concept of taking risks is actually really interesting and different in Camelot Unchained, not just because they're willing to try new and interesting little features in the game, but it's different from a lot of other games that try new things, because a lot of those other games are the same general concept. 80% of the game is the same thing done over again, and then they just, well, let's add this one new feature in there. Let's add this little, you know, new aspect to it. Throw a bit of a curveball in there. See if people like it. See how interesting it is. It's kind of tacked on top of the same repackaged sort of game. Whereas it's interesting with Camelot Unchained, they've got, you know, a lot of developers that are really old school and, you know, come from really older games that kind of set some of the standards for how all those things would work, especially in the PvP arena. But at the very core concept, the whole way they're organizing it and marketing it and putting it out there and involving people is a bit of a gamble. It's a risk. They're taking that risk from the very core foundation of the game. They're just making everything. There are a lot of elements of traditional games and stuff, but they're taking kind of, I feel, a lot of risks with different elements of it.
Right? Like the progression is a core system, you know, and it's what keeps people engaged. And from the core, their progression system is completely different from anything. Like they're talking about maintenances in the night that actually deliver experience, so you don't exactly know what is giving you more XP, what is not. You know, you just know you gotta do a bunch of stuff, and then in the end of the day, you get all the experience, you know, at the same time. So this is stuff, obviously, we're going to talk about that BSC video and everything. There's a lot to discuss about progression, but it is just one example about a core mechanic, you know, how you move your character forward, how you progress. And they're completely revamping it, you know, the skill system. You see, you know, the most recent game that I played seriously was ESO, and they were promising, you know, all the bars, you know, like, oh, you're going to have only 5-6 skills on the bar. It's not going to be like all those MMOs where you have, you know, a bunch of action bars on the screen. We're going to simplify it, but we're going to keep it complex and everything. Well, you know, in the end, it's all the same. Right. It's pretty much just like Guild Wars 2. You know, it's not something that is completely new, and there are skills you put on the bar that you don't even use. So, I mean, in the end, they failed to deliver it in the way that was promised. Now, you know, Camelot Unchained comes with a completely, you know, you make your own skills, which is something that we have never seen. I have never seen that, you know. So that's what is revolutionary, you know. That's what's different. They're saying we're taking risks, but they're really taking risks on the core main stuff of the MMO.
Real risks.
Meat. Yeah, it's not like, well, we're gonna make a WoW clone and then it's gonna have this, and that different. You know, they're not doing this, which is what Velik was talking about.
And I mean, the awesome thing is that the fact that this was based on Kickstarter, they already have, I don't know the number, but it's over 10,000, right? I don't know, it's 15, 20, there's so many backers already that this is what they want, right? A lot of times you have a development company, they're putting in millions of dollars, they say, give us a game that we can sell a lot of, right? And here, they're not worried about that. They said, let's make a game we want to make, and then they showed us what the game was, and we have all these people who were backing it, right? And so they can take these risks because they already have the backing of people who want to be a part of this risk. They don't have to worry about offending people or making them mad or, you know, running them off. They've already decided we can do this thing with this many people and this much money. Because you see that all the time in other games. Just like you guys were saying, you know, we're going to do this thing different. It's going to look different and feel different. And you get to the end and it's, you know, it's the same game.
Yeah.
This isn't going to be.
You also see on those situations, you also see they're like, we're going to do this different. And then if it's too different, people start complaining, right? Because that's what people do. And then, you know, they change it. That like they're okay. We're not going to do this anymore. It's going to be like, you know, they try to find they're trying to find a compromise. That's what most games do because they don't want to lose a big slice of the market. But in this one, you don't have that worry. It's just like you said, is you know, they already have, you know, if we have this much subscriber, we can run this game, and we're going to be happy with that. And if we have extra, awesome, but we don't need them. We just want to make a solid game that will please a good population of the MMO market, and that's it, you know. So having that kind of principle already helps a lot because then you don't cater to those people who pretty much don't know what they want but keep asking for it. And then, you know, the developers have to just deliver it somehow. And because of that, they kind of break their entire game, you know?
And talking about how many people, right, are going to be in the game, one of the hugest sort of kind of crazy things they're doing, there's no PvE, right? Like there's no, I mean, you look at
progression. There's no
right, no PvE progression. I mean, look at foundational principle number 2. RVR isn't the end game. It's the only game. Right? Most games are, they make a game and they throw on PvP because they know people want to play. But, I mean, you read through this, I mean, there's so much information for us to cover. I mean, really, we could have done a show on every one of these foundational principles. But you look through that thing, I mean, that's one of the craziest things they're doing, right? There's no PvE, right? I mean, Velik, what are you going to do? You're a big PvE, right? Care Bear? What do you do? No?
No. Velik is RP PvP, man.
I know.
I roleplay and PvP. I don't actually do in-game PvE. That's actually exciting for me because I actually loathe the concept of in-game. I've had whole rants with people on this. I hate the idea of an in-game. I'm like, the game is there to be played. The whole game is for playing. Why is there an end of the game that you have to strive to get to actually enjoy the game? The whole game should be for enjoying. So for me, breaking it all down into just one big PvP area that you can enjoy the entire time through is, I think, you know, really integral. It's one of the main things that made me latch onto the game.
And it kind of changes the whole way the game works, right? Because now you're not looking at, well, these people have this kind of gear and they went and did this dungeon, and we're looking at balance between how this works against a boss and how this works against a player. I mean, this really, I mean, it makes sense. It's a foundational principle because this goes to the core of the whole game. It changes everything, right? Like, that, I agree with you. That's one of the reasons I'm so excited. I mean, I played Dark Age of Camelot. It was the first MMO I ever really played it for years. And I tell people it ruined me, right? It ruined me. And I know neither of you did, but you have that first game. Everybody knows their first MMO that they really put time into. And nothing can ever match that, right? And so playing Dark Age of Camelot, I'm playing PvP. I'm out in this like open zone, not just 5 people in a little arena, but this huge area. We're taking keeps. And that, since that moment, nothing in MMOs has been that fun. I've done raiding, I've done arena, but and when I saw that, I mean, I saw the Kickstarter and I saw open PvP and Mark Jacobs, and I donated. Right, I became a backer. And that was it. I didn't read anything else.
Low standards.
It was those two things. I saw Mark Jacobs and RVR, and this is the only game I've done for Kickstarter then or since, because of that. And I think there's a lot of people who want that kind of game, right? Alistair, like, aren't you sick of games like changing the way your skills work because some PvE person?
And you know, that's the thing. My first game was WoW, and I started playing MMOs, like I said, in 2006. So it's been almost 10 years now. And you know, when you start in WoW, there's a weird sensation because, you know, I knew that something was missing but I didn't know what it was. And it took me to play ESO and do RVR in ESO, even though the RVR there is not not ideal now that I understand what RVR even is. but it the sensation of just being with your guildies and attacking keeps and taking castles and everything, this is something that I had never experienced before. It's not in WoW, it's not in Star Wars: The Republic, which was the game that I played right after WoW. Any of those games have any kind of warfare like this, and it is something that I look forward to see done right. Because I think the serious mistake that both Guild Wars 2 and ESO have made in RVR is the flipping keeps too fast. That thing that just oh, this keeps under attack. Oh, never mind, it's taken. Until you get there, there's not even a time for you to get there. You see it under attack, and you have to just ignore it and think of your own strategy. Which keeps is my group going to ninja take, because that other one is lost. You can't get there in time, right? So that's the kind of stuff that I want to see gone on this one. But I mean, just having an entire RVR game is a completely new experience to me. I have no idea what I'm going to feel like. I just feel excited about it, to be honest.
Velik, did you play those other, ESO and Guild Wars 2? I mean, we don't want to talk about other games too much, but I mean, that's the best way to compare, right? Like, those are maybe the best games that are out now that give you this sort of open world keeps that you get to destroy, and they have three different, there's three different sides. And of course, Dark Age Camelot, which is older, but most recently people can relate to Guild Wars 2 and ESO. Have you played those, and is that the PvP you like, or do you like smaller arena? Or
I never actually played Guild Wars 2. Guild Wars 1 was one of my first MMOs, which of course did not have the RVR element to it, really. My favorite PvP MMOs have actually been number one being EVE Online. I played EVE Online on and off for a long time. Of course, it's Sandbox and about as open world PvP as you can get, but of course it's very, very different. But hey, it has spaceships.
Right,
and
can't go wrong there.
And I did play the Elder Scrolls Online. Of course, there are a lot of problems with the game and the PvP in that game, but I did enjoy a lot of it. I played Warhammer Online, which I felt like the PvP in Warhammer was ESO was very reminiscent of Warhammer for me, because I never liked doing the battlegrounds. I only liked doing the keep battles in Warhammer. The keep battles I felt were perhaps a little bit better done in Warhammer than they were in TSO. But those would be, I guess, the two directly relatable games that I've played. It would be Warhammer Online and Elder Scrolls.
Mm-hmm. Now you just brought up EVE, and that made me think. I mean, jumping ahead to Foundational Principle 11, right? We're kind of skipping ahead here, but Foundational Principle 11 says sandboxes are great fun for kids and adults as well. And I guess talking about RVR, I mean, everything, because RVR is the game, I guess you could say every foundational principle, they all kind of come together. But you're talking about EVE, which is a sandbox game, and I think that's one thing that's going to make Camelot Unchained stand out and be so much different, is because in these other games, like I played Guild Wars 2 for a year and a half, I played ESO, I played these games for a long time. Like I said, Dark Age Camelot ruined me, so that's all I want to do. And a huge difference is, like you were talking about, Alistair, it's so quick. You go and take this keep, and then you go to another keep and you take it, and then the other one it's so quick, the turnaround, and there's no buy-in, right? It's not, you don't really care. It's like, oh, they took that keep.
It's not really your keep either.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it's something the developers made. Yeah, the developers made it, they put it out there, you're fighting over it, and it's kind of fun, but it's like, you don't have that sense where it's like, oh, they just took my keep, right? Like, you don't really care.
Especially because you can just go in there and take it back.
Yeah, it takes...
Wait for them to leave and take it, because they won't have time to return and defend it. They make ninja taking keeps a viable strategy, or even, in some cases, the better strategy, the most viable strategy. You start pushing into a keep, and you realize that there's too much resistance, there's too many people defending. It's not worth it. You give up and you move to another, and that shouldn't be the case. It shouldn't be like, we are sieging this keep. We're going to siege it for 2 hours if we have to, but we're going to take it, But having this mindset of, really going for something meaningful doesn't happen on those games because of the speed, and it's not worth it. You know.
Yeah, you hit on a really good point there, because I want to feel that when someone's attacking my keep. I want to go, no, they burned down my favorite tavern. I
Right.
want to be mad.
And with Camelot Unchained being a sandbox, I mean, we're going to be able to build our own keeps, right?
Yes.
I mean, what?
Yeah.
I haven't played. Are there any other games out there? I mean, I guess Eve. I never played Eve, but what other kind of games are out there? I guess. Have you guys played a game where you put all this time and effort into building this thing, and then someone else can come and take it, right? They can destroy it. Like, usually you're out, you're PvPing. Most games now, you can't loot anything. You can't take anything. There's no real consequence. All you have to do is respawn. Most of these games, you respawn and you can run back to the action in 10 seconds. You can just teleport over there. So there's no consequence whatsoever. So it all adds to this kind of feeling of being meaningless. And we're going totally the other way with Camelot Unchained. You got to build your keep. But to do that, you got to collect all these resources. It's going to take time and effort. Like that, to me, that's the most exciting thing. Like, I cannot wait to go in game, see this awesome building someone else made. I know in my head that they spent hundreds of hours in all these resources, and I destroy it. I just take it down, right? Like, isn't that the best feeling? Like, we're PvPers. Like, that's our goal. Right, that's our goal. Exactly. I'm sitting on my side of my computer screen, and I want to know the other person on their computer is like in a frothing rage because I just took out 500 hours of their time, right?
And it's especially awesome when there is a troll brother that tapes their reaction. You know, they're like, but in all seriousness, you know, it's kind of a thing we have been missing, because it's slowly. The modern MMOs have been removing certain things from the games and adding convenience, right? Like, so, I mean, walking from here to there it takes too long. You know, I don't want to take 10 minutes just to get to the place where I'm going to quest. So let's add a teleport. Okay, cool. Dying and losing all this stuff, that's too much. You know, let's just remove that too. And they kept doing this over the years, but it got to a point where you get on the game and you're sit there watching your character and wondering, whatever I do, I mean, there's no penalty. I can't really affect the other players. You know, this guy, Jesus, that's a freaking giant mic. Anyway, you know, I can't really affect the other player in a meaningful way. I mean, I can go and kill this guy that is questing. He can respawn 10 feet away and keep questing, you know? And why am I even doing this, you know? So you cannot inflict permanent or meaningful damage on the other player, and that hurts PvP, you know, a lot, because it feels like just a mini game, just a sport, you know. I'm gonna go in there. If we lose, awesome. If we win, awesome too. Nobody is really affected. On the long term, tomorrow I'll play a little bit more, you know. But I think with the sandbox MMO of building things, territory, conquer, that adds what is missing from the modern MMOs, which is that sense of, well, I need to check if they're taking this territory, but because if they destroyed the keep that we had last night, they're really close to getting to our zone, so we got to do something about it, you know? So you are following what's going on in the community, what's going on in the game, and then it really affects you. Like, you can have a bad week, and you can have a good week, you know? So I'm eager to just see that. Obviously, it also means the loss of a lot of convenience and eventual frustration, right? Because you're not going to win every time.
Yeah, I did want to comment on some of the comments in chat. I actually don't think it's so much about PvP and about you know, coming in and trashing people's keeps they've spent hours and hours on.
That's what I'm going to be doing.
That they really don't, you know, they're not that interested in hurting other people in their enjoyment of the game, and I don't think that's what it's about, really. I mean, yeah, we enjoy the thought that someone just spent hours on this and we've crushed it, but I don't think it's so much the fact that, you know, we really want to hurt that person. We want to go and tear down their enjoyment of the game and go, ha ha ha, you built this keep and I have trashed it and your game is ruined. It's more that keep was meaningful. That keep had time and investment in it. It wasn't just a copy paste thing that's brought up into the world and, you know, the developers made it. It's just that was meaningful. It applied to their tactics, their strategy, their side, their faction was pulled together to build this thing. And we came in, spent tons of effort, and we crushed it. And that's a good feeling because it feels like you accomplished something.
Yeah, and it's not about, you know, if you don't like ruining somebody's day, you know, if you're not that kind of person, I get it. You know, you're not the kind of person who will just kill the guy who crossed you. Just cross you. You're attacking for no reason. You don't like doing that. That's great. You can focus on protecting your friends from other people who will do that. So you can focus on being the guy who doesn't gank but ganks back, right? I mean, there's room for everybody, and whatever people enjoy, as long as there's meaning on what's going on, that's what matters, right? Because if I'm killing Velik, and he can't get to whatever point it is, then Ziz comes to rescue him. Ziz helped him in a meaningful way, and he screwed my day, because now I'm dead. And
so my tavern.
It happens, and then I'm going to think, well, should I keep doing this? Maybe not. Maybe I should just give up, or maybe I should keep doing it with a bigger group so that Velik and Ziz can kill me. Whatever it is, having that meaningful fight is what counts, even if it's not exactly what you enjoy.
Yeah, and there's so much stuff we could talk about, right? I mean, really, this being our first episode, we're kind of giving a highlight version of all this stuff, right? But there's so much, it goes so deep. Like you guys are talking about, you don't have to go out and just kill other people to be a jerk, right? You don't have to be a buttface. But you can stay back and you can make your own buildings, which are good for your realm. Like you're talking about, you could be a mercenary, right? And you could hire yourself out to caravans to protect them. Because there's so many things we haven't talked about, right? How do you get the resources to build these keeps? The crafters that are going to be out there, they're going to need to be protected, right? Making fortifications that are out there in the world. The idea they have of this map that is broken into pieces, and as you get more pieces, it comes together. There's so many parts of this. It's not just because we think about a lot of games that are out there. You look at ESO or Guild Wars 2, whatever it is, you go on this map, you kill some people, and that's about it. But this game has so many different layers to it. So many different things you can do. You can do that. You can be the good guy. You can be the bad guy. You can help people. You can, just so many things.
Exactly. I mean, you can be either the guy who grieves, who attacks, or you can be the protector. If you don't like ruining somebody's day, then just go out there when you're escorting your friend that is trying to gather a resource. He's trying to gather a resource. That resource is important for his building, for his crafting skill, whatever it is. And you want to make sure he doesn't get killed by those jerks who keep killing people all the time. So I mean, the content is player created, and that's what Sandbox mean, right? And that's the element that is missing from games these days, because they want to do the RVR, they want to get that RVR experience without frustrating people too much with those old school mechanics and with all the conveniences that came up on the last years of MMO. But the truth is that you can't have one without the other. There needs to be, at some point, you need to say, okay, we value meaningful fights and PvP more than we value this guy getting frustrated because he can't teleport. So we're going to have PvP and we're going to have no teleports. Just a lame example, but you see what I mean here.
Well, how do you balance that? Because foundational principle number 3, we're going to take a look at now, and it says you should always hold the hands of your little children while crossing busy intersections. But our players are not children, and this is not an intersection crossing. So we're talking about all these things that have meaning, right? And of course, coupled together, something has meaning. If you lose it, you're going to be frustrated, right? So you put your time and your effort into someone killed you, someone took your keep, whatever it is. This is one of those things that's a little bit crazy. Other games don't do it because, like you guys have been talking about, they want to make it easy for you. They don't want you to get mad or quit or anything like that. But in the foundational principle here, it almost seems like they're intentionally putting these things in to the game. I mean, they're not trying to make people mad and quit, right? Like that doesn't make any sense.
It will probably make a lot of people mad and quit. I mean, when EVE Online came online, I think they had 100,000 subscription at launch, and then they lost like 75,000 on the first month or two. They lost 75% of their people because people were not. They were like, oh, what is this? This is too, this is too different. This is too hardcore, And I think it's kind of part of it. There's no way to please everybody. But a lot of those people will come back later. I think today they have 500,000,
Yeah, they're growing.
So it's a lot of those people will come back. A lot of those people won't, but then new people will. As long as you have a solid base and you know what you're aiming for, you're going to get there. What you can't have is having an initial project and then just seeing that's not too popular and switching it in the middle to appease to empty complaints from Care Bears or people who don't know what they're talking about. They know nothing about development of games, but they are your customers, so you got to listen to them, right? But that's what Camelot Unchained doesn't have, in my opinion. So I'm hopeful they won't do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I don't think they'll really have that so much of an issue with the people quitting because the game's too hardcore. Because from the very beginning, they've come out and said, this is the pool of people we're making this game for. We want these hardcore players who really want this sort of PvP experience. And yet, I think they are going about it in a tactful manner. They're not just going, this is going to be the most hardcore game we can possibly make it with all sorts of horrible death penalties and everything. They're not coming in and saying permadeath. Right. Everyone suddenly goes, they're saying we're doing these hardcore things, but they're doing it in a fashion that can still appeal to people that aren't that hardcore. They can still enjoy the game. We've got different elements in there that I think will very strongly appeal to the more hardcore players who are willing to put lots of thought in their characters. Having limited respecs so that you can't just flip-flop to every flavor of the month build you want for PvP. And I think taking out some of the travel elements and things like that to really kind of appeal to some of the more hardcore player base without necessarily going absolute, fanatical with it and just scaring everyone else off.
That's a delicate balance, isn't it, though? Like, obviously, they're not making a game to torture people, right? Like, they're making a game that's going to be enjoyable. People are going to like to play. But because they're adding in these meaningful elements, which we haven't had in games in the past 5 or 10 years, there's all these things you're talking about, like traveling and respec, things we've come to just take for granted. Like, it should be easy. Like, what do you mean I can't click on this and do what I want, right? That's a delicate balance, isn't it? Like, without that meaningful amount, people aren't going to care. But if you make them care too much, then they get frustrated, right? I think it goes back to older games, right? Mark Jacobs and the development team, they said they're going back to old games, not just like EverQuest games and Dark Age of Camelot, even older than that, back to pen and paper games and Dungeons and Dragons, these sorts of things that have a huge following. Those people aren't quitting, right? So, I mean, that's one of the things earlier we touched on it just a little bit, Alistair. You're talking about how when you're playing the game, you're not going to see these bright flashes of, oh, you just got 1,000 XP. Aren't you a great little person? Good for you, right? Like, it's going to be, you're not going to know exactly how much experience. You're not going to get the pat on the back every few seconds telling you're a great player. Those sorts of things, that's what he's talking about here, right? We're not going to hold your hand and, right? I mean,
yeah,
I'm excited.
I think that favors the kind of player that they are aiming for, which is us, essentially. The kind of players who see ahead. So you make a plan and you work towards the plan. You work so the plan happens. Whatever plan it is, whatever, it's character development, if you're sieging somewhere, if you want to achieve something in the game, that's what made MMOs so cool. 15 years ago, it was the fact that it was a bunch of people together. They had to work together. They needed each other to do things in a way that was feasible. Otherwise, if you try to do it by yourself, you either couldn't do it or it was going to take forever, right? That was how Ultima Online and all these old games worked. And that's the meaning of an MMORPG. You got to group up and do stuff, right? The thing that happened with recent MMOs, the hand-holding that the principal talks about, is where you can pretty much solo the entire game. So people don't even need each other. I remember when I started playing WoW, I would love to group with somebody who had already leveled a character to 60 because they knew all the quests or they had a good idea of them. So I didn't need to go, and keep searching on websites to find where this guy is that I have to deliver this piece of whatever, this guy was on chat with me. He had already played the game. He knew what was going on, and his help, his knowledge was useful. So, he was a valuable friend, a valuable member of the community. And this disappeared in WoW, and it disappeared in the MMO industry as a whole, just because Everything is oh, you go here. It points you where you have to go.
They have
It
arrows
gives
on
you
the ground that show you where to go.
exactly. So this kind of need to rely on your friend to specialize on something so that you can be useful to everybody around you, that need disappeared because everybody can solo everything, and the game guides you through it. So you don't really need to have anybody tell you something. You don't need to specialize on anything, and you don't need a specialist. You can just go and do stuff, right? So that's what I think Camelot Unchained hopes to bring back with all these non-hand-holding principles. Yes, they create some frustration. Sometimes it's going to be like, oh, I wish I could PvP, but I only have 30 minutes, and in 30 minutes, I mean, I can only get to the keep. I can't even start, the moment I kill a guy, I have to go, and then where will I log off? Will I log off on the middle of the keep? What if tomorrow it's taken? So you have to think ahead. You can't just turn on the computer and go smashing things. You have to say, okay, where am I? Oh, I'm in this keep. Where are they attacking? You have to look at the scenario. You have to see who's online on your guild, see what you can actually do, and then work towards it. And that's the kind of MMO that is fun, that to the old school people, to people who really support the game long term, because you don't need to play the entire day, but when you sit to play, you got to pay attention, right?
Yeah, there have been a lot of people I have talked to, especially old school MMO players, who have told me time and again, I want to have to talk to people. They play games now. They don't go out and talk to people. They don't have to. They don't have to depend on anyone for anything. They want to die and then go, I need someone to resurrect me. I need to find someone who can help me get my gear or get my back, or come back to life, depending on whatever the game is. They need that help. And there's a certain element, a certain core player base that I think is sick of a certain degree of this hand holding of the elements that not just guide you and make life easier, but to a certain degree, they diminish the social aspect of the game. Like, things like the auction house, they're great in certain respects. They really make certain things easier. I'm glad they're taking it out because I don't necessarily want it to be super easy to go find out what the absolute cheapest price is on this one thing that I want to get, just because I happen to type it in real quick and go sort by price and have it pull up. I want to have to go and talk to people, and that's good for the crafters too, because they get notoriety. The best crafters who have the best price, you find out who they are, you get to know them, you go, this is my crafting guy, this guy makes my swords, I'm going to go to him every time, I know he'll give me a fair price.
Yeah, exactly. And games like, for example, Guild Wars 2, I think took that totally the opposite way. I mean, really, we're seeing games, it went from way back in the day, when MMOs first came out, it was this like amazing thing because you couldn't play with hundreds of people online in a game before, right? You're playing by yourself on a console, you're playing Zelda or Mario, right? Now we're playing online, we're playing MUDs, right? Text-based games, and now we're finally into this 3D world, and like it's amazing, and we had all these people, and it was this kind of push to having more and more people into this like living world. And recently it seems like we're going the opposite way, where now it's like a massively single player game, right? It's like Guild Wars 2, you could have every crafting profession by yourself. You could do, you could level up all the way. Even your main storyline, this like amazing part of the game where you're like killing this giant dragon, you're doing it by yourself with some NPCs.
You never have to get to a mailbox, man. You just opened your mail.
Right, you just click and it. Yeah, it's these massively single-player games because we're trying to make it more convenient because someone doesn't want to walk across the street and click on a mailbox. Yeah, and I totally agree with you guys. Like, I want that crafter that I know. And he may not give me the best price, but he's always online. I can always count on him. Or he's really good at making swords, and I use swords, right? Or uses axes, or whatever it is. And you make it easier and easier and easier, and you just click. And I think Guild Wars 2 had a worldwide auction house. I never knew a single person there. I have no idea, but I still remember back in Dark Age of Camelot, people had their own little plots, their own little house. You had to go to them, and there were certain houses that always had potions. Or these people were, you know what I mean? So we lost that. And that takes us to another foundational principle. Point number 4, choices matter. RPGs have traditionally offered players a plethora of choices. And over time, I mean, it used to be you picked if you wanted to be a tank, and you were a tank. You didn't get to become a healer later on because you felt like it. You were a tank, right? If you want to be really strong but slow, all these things that had choices, your race and gender selection. They talk about how you can have a really heavy sword, and if your character is not strong enough, you can't pick it up. Like I mean, can you imagine players today trying to pick up this cool new sword, and they're like, oh, and then it says you're not strong enough? Like, what? Are you kidding me? Like, these are things.
I got the sword. Why can't I use it? You know, like
right. Yeah, and I mean, I remember when this foundational principle first came out, and I don't know if it's still a thing, but Mark Jacobs kind of talked about a little bit how there might be, you know, if your character is wet, you take more damage from lightning damage, right? Or he just kind of mentioned like maybe female character might not be as strong, right? And I don't even think that's in the game anymore, but he just mentioned it, and it sent off this like firestorm. People are going crazy, like, how could you possibly, my character can't be as strong because she's female, right? And we're not getting into the sexist thing, but we're talking about like choices matter, right? What you decide to do, you can't just change your mind 10 hours later, right? Yeah. Like I'm excited for that because that adds again to being a meaningful game, right?
Yeah, and that's the challenge. You know, you kind of pick your hand in MMOs, you know, and then you do the best you can with the hand you picked. That's the way it is, you know. And so the fun thing is to understand the mechanics behind it and everything, and pick a good hand that you can use in a way that you find fun and efficient, right? But the problem with today is that you don't even, today MMOs, you don't even have a hand. You know, you just can pick everything. You pick the whole deck.
You got the whole deck.
And then you just move on with that. But for people who like to plan, to min-max, to develop their characters, to specialize and everything, this gets boring because you just can do everything. So, you know, the other guy who is not a min-maxer, who doesn't know what he's doing, doesn't think about it, doesn't research, doesn't care, he can be pretty much as efficient as you. And that's not cool. And it's not about game time. It's about the way you approach the game, right?
Yeah, this is one of those things that really appeals, I feel, to the hardcore gamers, the people that are going to sit there and think out their character ahead of time. And this is one of the elements that actually goes back to the oldest of old school games. It goes back beyond before MMOs. This is one of those elements that comes directly from pen and paper tabletop games. You made your character. You picked your stats. You thought out your stats, your spells, your abilities, whatever you wanted. You thought them out ahead of time. And you put them down. Once they're on the paper, they're done. You can do nothing else with them. They're done. That being said, I love the idea of choice. I love the idea of making things stick and making them important, limiting respecs, limiting all that kind of stuff, so that when you do something, it is important. I do have a bit of a part of this that I am kind of worried about, and that comes into play when in the foundational principle for it, they talked about how races might have like a min-max slider for stats. You know, you have a minimum stat for some range and a maximum range for a certain stat. And genders may even as well, you know, all kinds of things may have these sort of slider in there of what you can or can't do, which I think is a really good way to identify races and make it go, these, you know, they have this range, so they are potentially really good in these certain things. I think it's a good way to take on the racial bonuses without overdoing it like a lot of games do, or completely nerfing and getting rid of it like a lot of newer games do. But I am, I guess, concerned a little bit.
What about balance?
I want to see it, but I don't want to see a race or a class pigeonholed. You know, I don't want to see, golems are the best masons ever. If anyone makes a mason, a crafter that's going to build houses, and it's not a golem on this faction, well, he's crazy. Why would he do that? I don't want to see that. So there's a certain degree of concern for that. Yes. But I'm hoping that the stat sliders and everything should prevent that from being a problem.
How do you correct that though? If, let's say, hypothetically, the golem has something they build faster. Could be 1% faster or 10% faster. It doesn't matter to those min and maxers, right? How big the difference is, right? It's 1%
more to the community, right? Because then certain guilds are able to achieve amazing amounts of building in a day because of those 10% extra. So you have to turn it down to 5. But to the min maxer, it doesn't make a difference. It's gonna go after that 1%.
Yeah,
or 5. Doesn't matter.
How do you fix that though?
I'm actually not as concerned if it only affects the min-maxer. You know, if the min-maxer is the only one that's like, I have to pick this race in this class because they have the absolute best bonus. Because they're going to do that no matter what.
That's what they value,
going to
right?
go after that ultimate bonus. It's just when it's to the degree that it affects everyone. Like even people who aren't hardcore min-maxers look at it and go, oh man, I feel bad taking this race because I'm going to really have penalties in doing the class I want, and I'm not going to be nearly as good as the other people. Then I think it's a problem. So there's definitely a scale there, I think. That as long as you're within a certain range, it's fine.
Yes.
It's too much.
One example, that hits home for me, because I always roll female characters on MMOs, and, he talked about female characters being weaker, and somehow he mentioned that, at some point. Maybe not for all races, but, let's suppose it's for humans, or the Storm, what is the name of the other one?
Storm Rider?
Storm Riders. Yes. So, let's suppose those two classes have weaker females. They have less strength, or they gain strength slower. Whatever it is that they decide to do for that. One thing is having it have less strength, but you can still compensate with dexterity. You can be a different type of warrior. You can pick up that class and pick a warrior class that, is dependent on strength. Maybe you're not going to be able to use that super heavy two-handed weapon that a lot of warriors use, but you can dual wield and use a lighter armor and still be equally efficient, just in a different way. You can adapt your class to fit the limitations of the race that you picked. But another thing is you can't even use the most basic sword because you're too weak. Or, your strength is capped at a value that you can't go beyond. So you will never do the same damage as another male warrior would do. Even if you switch your spec around it, even if you pick booms and banes that compensate for it, it doesn't matter. You will never there's no way. So that's what Veilcast was talking about, pigeonholing, like making it so you choose a class that will never be as efficient as the rest, even if you change the way you play. That is what they have to be careful. But people have to be willing to look at, so you pick your hand, your race and your class, and then you see how to best play that class with the limitations of that race, how you can pick booms and banes that will compensate for the weaknesses that your race has, or even if they won't compensate for the weakness, they will strengthen your strong points so that you can really specialize into something and be efficient. If they do that, all the rest is, up for grabs. But it's like you said, it's a delicate balance.
Yeah, it's another one of these things we're talking about. It's got to be that delicate balance, right? And that kind of puts you on edge a little bit. There's all these things where if they don't do it just right, and that's what we want. We want a new game. We want something different. But again, we're sitting in the back, right? We're backseat drivers where, well, you better do that right. If it's not, I'm not going to like it, And so these sorts of things, I guess last but not least, and all these foundational principles are really great. There's 2 or 3 pages. Go to Camelot Unchained and read them. There's so much stuff in all of these.
Movie quotes. Many movie quotes in the principle.
Many movie quotes. That's right.
I don't understand any of them. Do you get any of them? It's freaking.
I think there's some older ones.
I think it's too. Mark Jacobs is too old for me in terms of movie choices. Because I watch every movie, but I can't get a single quote.
There we go. Criticism. Get some newer quotes in there, please. But the last thing that we're going to talk about here is foundational principle number 7. And it says crafting should be fun, useful, and not induce carpal tunnel syndrome. And it goes on to talk about, all their ideas, what they're going to have for crafting. And just like everything else we talked about in this, foundational principles, crafting is going to be a huge part of the game. We look at the fact it's going to be an RVR game. It's going to be PvP. You're going to build your stuff. Your choices matter, right? All these things together. Crafting is maybe, I think I say this about every principle, but this is maybe the biggest thing in this game, right? Everything
it's going to define what you do while you're not in RVR, basically. Essentially, that's, it's going to define what people do when they're not PvPing. It's the community. So it is
unless they just want to craft. Then
we got to say there's a crafter class by itself. There's the fighters, and then there's the crafter, right? And most people will probably play fighters. But if you want to be a crafter, hardcore crafter, do all the crafting stuff. There's a specific class for that. Everybody else can do a little bit of crafting, right? They can maybe repair their sword or sharpen it or something, right? Maybe gather some stuff a little bit. But crafting is a class on its own, right? And I guess maybe we should talk about that. Do you guys think that's a good idea, having it be its own class? Do you like that?
I'm a little bit. The class thing is a little bit torn, but I'm actually in favor of it because I've always felt like when it comes to crafting, most MMOs, the only thing that appeals to me is either you go all out or you just don't even do it. When most MMOs, when I play it, I think the crafting sucks. It's terrible. It's just some little activity you do to waste time. It becomes a time sink. You waste tons of time doing it. Some people may enjoy it, but you spend tons of time doing it, possibly to make money. But that's what it becomes in a lot of games. You do crafting to make money. The things you make usually aren't even the best items in the game. You might use them to enhance some of the items in the game, but they're not really the best things people can get in the game. They go in Raid to get the best items in the game, or they go in PvP to get the best items in the game. It has always driven me absolutely crazy to get into a game and start doing the crafting and go, oh, well, I kind of want to do this. It's thematically appropriate to me. I want to make armor. That'll be cool, and I kind of might enjoy it. I enjoyed some of the crafting in TISO initially, but there always becomes a point where I'm looking at it and going, I'm making this, but somebody is getting something way better than this just by playing the game. Why am I even bothering? What's the point of this? But in this game, the stuff the crafters make is going to be the best stuff.
It's everything.
There's no loot.
All the stuff.
They're just going to go and they're going to make the best items.
You're not going to kill a dragon and get a super armor. You're going to kill a dragon to maybe get to a node of resource that your crafter has to gather, and then come back to the city and make the super armor for you with a bunch of other stuff that he also has to gather. So that's the difference. There's no like kill, loot, congratulations. It's like if you're killing a PvE mob, is to get somewhere, is to achieve a goal of crafting something, and then the crafter was really control the entire economy. So I feel that too. Like I think the game that made me feel worst about crafting was Star Wars in that regard. Because you just sent your companions there, and then it waited, and that was it. You didn't even do your own stuff; they did it for you. I get the feeling that the Dark Lord of the Sith is not going to go make an armor, but in the end, it just made the system kind of meaningless, and a lot of the modern MMOs have similar meaningless systems, and so it's a kind of refreshing. Even though I'm also just like you, Velik, I'm a little bit scared of. Are we going to have enough crafters? Who's going to want to play just a crafter? But that's, but then I realized that I was mostly scared of that because I am not a crafter. So, it worries me that people will find it boring, but people who like it, they won't find it boring. So I think it's going to work.
I mean, we talk again about it being meaningful, right? I mean, I hate to bring this up again, but Guild Wars 2, you could do every crafting profession on one character. Just all of them. And you never needed to talk to anybody else. You didn't have to do anything else. There's a whole separate class. So that right there makes crafters like, it's going to be awesome. Like now it used to be crafter was like celebrated. It was like, hey, thank you. You're an awesome crafter. Thanks for helping me. Like they were like top tier raiders or top tier PvP players. They had the same amount of influence as everyone else. Now you don't even notice who they are. You click on the lowest price. You don't even know who they are. But it's not just that they're gonna make everything, right? Crafters are gonna make the buildings you're gonna use in PvP. They're gonna, and again, everybody can, siege weapons. I mean, everybody can do a little bit of stuff, but that's just like, I think they call it popcorn crafting, right? A little bit, I can pick up wood because the wood's laying on the ground. But crafters are basically gonna gather all the resources. They're going to make all the siege weapons. They're gonna make the keeps. They're gonna make your armor. They're gonna make your shield. They're gonna. I mean,
there's no RVR without crafters.
Right, it's all intertwined together. I mean, hypothetically, if there was no crafters, there'd be no game, right? Like it's like a real economy. Like there's, right?
And I think the way they've set it up is necessary as well, because they've set it up so that all the gear, all the crafting, everything comes from the crafters. All the items and everything come from the crafters. If they didn't set it up that way, the only other option in order to have the RVR game that they want to have would be to have us buy it from vendors, which would not be enjoyable because they don't want the PvE content. Without PvE content, you can't have the loot. So if they want to focus on RVR, they could possibly have you somehow randomly drop items and stuff when you die, just like a squirrel can randomly drop a +10 mace in most MMOs.
Where was it hiding the mace?
No, you don't want to know. You
get gold. You get gold from creatures on the forest. Where are they getting this gold? You know, they're eating it.
They're magpies. They're hoarding it.
So yeah, and one thing that I forgot what my point was going to be. Crap. I'll come back to you guys if I remember.
And there's so much stuff. I mean, again, we're just kind of hitting highlights of this stuff, but it goes so deep. Like they talk about if, let's say, it's hard for crafters to gather stuff because maybe their side isn't doing very well. They don't have a lot of, land territory. They're not getting a lot of resources. The king, like the leader of their realm, can help give stuff out, right? They're going to have, I think, stuff for them to do, even if, let's say, there's not players that need something, but they can make, let's say, weapons for the realm. And then the NPC, the king, holds it, and then later on, maybe he can distribute it. There's going to be the depths, right? We got our fancy little background here. It shows the tree and everything. It's the depths, which is going to be this almost like a dungeon. It's Camelot Unchained. It's like Dark Age of Camelot with... it's like you go down, there's all these bosses and monsters and stuff, but really it's a PvP zone still. But there's crafting resources that you can get, right? Like there's so much stuff, so much depth to it.
And they talked about players getting control of the mobs on the depths.
Right.
At some point. Yeah, I heard they're talking about, like you go in there and you take this area so you can control a big dragon and go harass the people from the other faction who are trying to get stuff on the depth. So even the PvE is kind of PvP, because everybody's fighting this big dragon who is player controlled. So that's an awesome concept. I've never seen that.
And it's so intertwined. Like you got to think like from the beginning of the game, Velik is going to go out and let's say he's going to craft something, right? Well, Velik can't just go by himself because he's a crafter. He's not really a fighter. So I'm going to go with him. I'm going to help protect him. So we go out and we find a mine. And it's not just like a little tiny mining node like you see in other games where you hit it a couple of times with a pickaxe and you're done. This is going to be like a huge mine that he's mining at for hours and hours or maybe even days. Well, we can't just sit there and do nothing. So I'm going to, he's going to build maybe a tower to help defend it. So I go up in the tower, I have my bow, and I'm like watching for people. Well, the other side is coming to take it because they need the resources, because you need those resources to build your keeps and to get your armor, right? So they come and they kill us and they take it. Well, now we go, it just round and round and round, this continuous...
Put it on the forums. Say, guys, we have a mine on this area. We need to go there and take it, and then everybody gathers. And the other side does the same. And it starts that, growing thing that maybe you're going to be fighting over the control of that mine for weeks until the mine is over, until there's no more thing together there, or until it's just more expensive to fight for the mine than to actually take it. So you just give up. You're like, okay, they got it. It's theirs, mine. But that's the kind of development. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think I think one of the coolest parts about this with the crafting is not only do you need to protect them, but it also is going to interlink, I think, in a lot of cases with the RVR content and the puzzle realm, something that I think will go on and make the puzzle concept for the RVR realm really cool. And that all of these will go into a larger scheme of planning where you'll have all the organized guild leaders and community leaders that will be forging this community unity for their faction as they plan, what is the faction's ultimate goal? What are the really big players in the faction want to do? They want to move these different continent pieces in the RVR realm together so they can move around to the right side and come out where there maybe aren't all these defended keeps and stuff. They need resources to build those things. So how are we going to organize and send people to go defend the mine we need so that we can go in there, defend it, hold it while the crafters all grab the resources, and then this funnels straight back up into the RVR in a plan that may take hours, days, weeks.
Yeah, maybe we fortify the mine too much and the enemy see that they can't take it, so they actually go to ambush our crafters going back to the base with the merchandise, So there are alternatives. There are all kinds of strategies that go into it, and these are, the important thing here is to realize that there's no guarantee that this is going to happen right off the bat, especially because this is all player created content. This is us. We will decide, if you want to attack, if you want to defend, if it means a lot or if it doesn't mean anything. The realm war is much more meaningful, and it's gonna be a resource war, which is something that they promised in ESO. But not even the siege that you use in ESO is made by anybody. Just buy it at the vendor, put 10,000 of them in your bag, and then just deploy them on the floor one by one. So this making a promise is easy, but this in Camelot Unchained, we see that they're making the promise and then they're backing up the promises with concepts and facts. They might not work. I don't want to get overhyped about this. I don't want to set unrealistic expectations about what this game will or will not be. I know better than that. But just seeing that they are working on actually giving substance to what they're promising with detailed concepts that get more and more detailed over time is what is keeping me at least hooked and hopeful and supporting this, because that's what we are missing in the MMO community. People say, oh, we're going to have this. Okay, how? Oh, well, we'll talk about that later, but we're going to have it. And I'm like, right. And everybody's just sitting there. Yeah, exactly. So this is not happening in Camelot Unchained. They're saying, we're going to have this, and, hold on, this is the concept. It's a little weird, but I'm going to tell you how it's going to be. And then they tell us. They don't underestimate our intelligence or our think we're going to just go crazy over things. They're like, guys, this is different, but I think we can make it work. And if we don't, over time, we're going to keep talking to you guys. You guys will have the chance to give your opinion, and we'll see what we can change or if we scrap the whole thing. But, taking risks, that's the whole thing. And I like it.
All comes back to number one, right?
Yeah.
First thing. Well, again, like I said, there's a ton of foundational principles. There's 15, and we just barely scratched the surface of all of them to try to talk about, get a general idea of what this game is going to look like. It's going to be PvP. Your choices are going to matter. Crafters are going to be unbelievably important. All these things. We didn't even talk about how you can make your own abilities, how you're going to have, all these things that are going to be so important. The world is like broken up. They're going to try to have it so there's like islands, kind of, they're broken up, but huge, and they come together. The stabilizers, the veil, right? Like, so many things we didn't talk about. We're going to be here every Saturday talking about all these things as they come out. We do know right now we just entered alpha, closed alpha. It's like a tech alpha, right? So they're getting closer. I'm getting excited. I know, Alistair, Velik, you guys want to try to, you've been burned before. There's other games that have said they're going to do this and do that. I guess I'm still young. I'm still excited. I don't care. Right? I'll stick my hand in the fire. I'm excited because I think worst case scenario, even if they can't do half of the things they say, and even if the other half that they do isn't as cool as it is in my imagination, it's still going to be so much different and so much more meaningful than every other game that's out there. I think it's still going to be awesome. But Velik, let's start with you. Closing remarks, overall, your general, when you think about Camelot Unchained, what do you think about it, and what gets you excited, and maybe what are your biggest reservations?
As I kind of mentioned, I think the part that actually gets me, I'm kind of a metagame person. I'm more of a strategist mentality, and I'm really into community and organizing people. So part of what really gets me excited is the potential for all this RVR and crafting organization. Laying down plans that are intended to last for weeks. Laying down the strategy for how we're going to go about how we want to move into their territory and take over this keep and that resource and so on and so forth to ultimately take over a big swath of territory. Part that I'm most worried about, it's going to be kind of weird for everyone else. The part that I'm most worried about is actually how many RPers are going to be, how many role players are going to be interested in the game. Because at first glance on the forums and stuff, you look at some of the polls that have been around for a long time. There's tons of votes on them, which is cool. Some of the other topics don't get quite so much activity. So I'm hoping the activity from role players stuff is going to go in a lot more, because that's as I mentioned earlier, that's one of my big things for MMOs. I like to role play. I like to organize that aspect of the community and get involved. So I'm hoping we see some really good representation from them.
Well, they already have some awesome lore about the game. You can read about the stories, how the veil was torn, and what so there's some cool stuff about it already. And I think being able to build your own buildings is going to help with RP, right? Like you want to build a tavern and be a tavern, right? Like you can sell potions out of there or whatever, right? Like there's a lot of stuff I think it could be awesome.
There's some good elements that could definitely help RP, even the ones that aren't necessarily intentional, like how your characters aren't going to necessarily be restricted from having certain armor or weapons. That's actually really big for RPers, especially people that are storytellers like me. You know, you go in and you're like, oh, well, my character's a mage, but I really want to go and pretend to be this warrior guy to come in and attack these other people that want to RP. Oh, I can't wear heavy armor. That sucks.
Can't even do
it. It's really a problem. Now I can. It's not a problem.
Yeah, you're going to get encumbered. You don't want to fight in heavy armor, but you can wear it for RP, right?
Yeah, no problem.
All right, well, Alistair, same question to you. What are you most excited for and maybe most, not concerned per se, but watching cautiously?
Well, the thing I'm most excited about is the RVR. I mean, I'm a PvP player. Back when I started in WoW, I wasn't, but I was just PvE. I was learning the ropes and catching everything. And then once I did my first Alterac Valley, I was like, that's it. You know, that's what I'm doing. That's what I like the most. That's what I do in all games that I play since then. And so I'm very excited about all the strategy possibility. You know, the possibility of big fights, being in on the front of the fight. You know, shield walls and breaking stuff and like, oh my God, they're getting siege up, hide behind this temporary wall that our crafters built for us. You know, all this movement in the fight and actually hands-on strategy for PvP. That's what I like. That's what I'm excited about the most. And my reservations are like I talked about when we were talking about choices matter. You know, choices have to matter, but they have, they don't need to restrict it to the point where they matter so much that you don't even want to do it. You know, it backfires at some point. That is what I mean. You know, if you make choices too restrictive, at some point people just don't even want to start, so they don't even want to choose because they have no options essentially to choose from. All the options have something that they completely cannot accept because they're too restrictive. So that's my worry. But hopefully this effect this will not happen, and who we will ensure that that will not happen is us. We in there, on the alpha, on the beta, testing this thing, giving feedback to CSE and saying, hey, I can't even play, the classes that I want. I understand that you want to limit this, and that, but this limitation isn't unnecessary. And if we can make a good case, if, people are really into it, they will hopefully hear us. They have been listening to us so far. So I hope that, we will not have that. But that's my biggest worry. That's the point where I'm constantly paying attention. I'll obviously be paying a lot of attention when I'm testing the game to those things. Okay, choices matter, but are the restrictions really necessary and intelligent? Because if you make dumb restrictions, people are just like, fuck this. I'm not doing this. They just give up.
Awesome. Well, any other last words, Veilcast, or anything else that you really want to put out there?
I don't think so, man. I'm good. I talked a lot.
Yeah, I mean, again, we just barely scratched the surface. I mean, we're going to talk about all the BSC days, all the crazy ideas. We just barely talked about them. We're going to be here next week, every Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Same place, same channel. And the recording of this will be available on YouTube. And soon we're going to have a fan site, which you can post everything to. And again, I'm just super excited. I'll be the fanboy. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Until they do something I don't like, then I'll put that out there. But right now,
it's important to say too that on the fan site, we're probably going to have forums. People will be able to go in there and discuss, criticize our episodes, make comments. Maybe we can use that on the next episode. You can suggest themes. You can, we're going to make sure we set up a good structure for everybody. It's not set up right now. We're just starting, but we're just trying to now get up with the whole structure around the podcast. But yeah, it's exciting times ahead of us. And
you can visit us now at legendgaming.net. A guild for Camelot Unchained is going to be Ordo Veritas, already set up. And you can check out Velik's stuff at his Twitter at XenoDuck. And we will see you next week, everyone. Thanks for watching.